Welcome to Voices of the Vigilant, where we dive deep into the human side of tech. Here, we go beyond the ones and zeros to explore the people, passions, and stories driving the cyber and internet security world. In each episode, we bring together experts, rebels, and innovators from across the tech industry to share their personal journeys, challenges, and victories. And here's your host and rebel in charge at Vigilant Violet, Jess Vachon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Voices of the Vigilant, the podcast where we explore what it means to stay awake, aware, and human in a rapidly changing digital world. And Happy New Year. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1. I'm your host, Jess Vachon, and today's conversation is one I'm especially excited about because it sits right at the intersection of reinvention, resilience, and real-world cybersecurity. My guest today is Saeger Fischer from Omada Technologies. Saeger currently protects the digital frontier as a senior account manager, but her journey into tech is anything but linear. She's a former educator who turned what she calls a quarter-life crisis into a full-blown tech triumph. And honestly, if it doesn't already resonate with you, give it 5 minutes. Saeger, welcome.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how excited I am to have this conversation with you. When you asked me to be on the show, I was absolutely thrilled. So very honored to be here, and I love what you're doing. I think it's a great service to the tech industry.
Oh, thank you so much. One of the things I didn't mention to people that is probably going to surprise people, it surprises me. You're a 17-time marathoner, in addition to being a mom of 3. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yep. Yes.
So we're definitely going to delve into that because if anyone's done a marathon or even a half marathon, you know how challenging that is. 17.
Yeah, it's I joke, I'm like, with 3 kids, I have to run off the crazy somehow, and somehow 17 marathons is still not enough to do that. But I am truly passionate about it. So it's I could talk all day about it. Something that I'm deeply passionate about and love. It brings so much joy to my life before I start my day job. So it's definitely how you're able to kind of help reconcile some of the craziness that's in our industry before you start your day. So it's a big, I don't look at it as a hobby. It's definitely something, it's not a question of if I'll do it. It's like, yes, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion as a part of my day to kind of set me up for the rest of the day.
So let's explore that a little bit. So you talk about the craziness and you talk about what running brings to you. I know for myself, I start out every day to deal with that craziness. I have to meditate, and then I do at least an hour-long workout, and that's 6 days a week. And that is my burning off the angst, kind of getting my mind to where it needs to be. Describe, what drove you to be a runner? When did you start that? And then what, when you're going through that run, I suspect you're thinking through things, you're planning your days or your whole life, balancing everything. How does that work for you? It's beyond the endorphins, right?
Yes, absolutely. So a little bit of background. I played competitive sports my entire life. I was at field hockey, ice hockey, lacrosse, track, you name it. I kind of played it growing up. And so when I got to the end of college where I pursued field hockey, I played there for 4 years at St. Lawrence University. And I moved to New York City to kind of start my career. There was just this void. You go from you play athletics your entire life, and then all of a sudden, it's done. That's it. And so I was doing a lot of soul searching, and I actually watched the New York City Marathon when I was there. And I was like, that looks awesome. It was just the most magical experience I can possibly describe. And it's the reason why it's so magical, it's because anyone can do it. You just have to have a pair of running shoes, a watch if you need it or want it, and just the drive to put one foot in front of the other. And I was like, what an amazing experience. There's people out there for 8 hours. Not an easy thing to do. And so I was like, I'm going to try that. And so I did my first one that following spring, the Vermont City Marathon. Of course, I said I was never, ever going to do it again, ever, because it was just your first marathon. You have no idea what you're doing. It was an awful experience. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, once the dust is settled, you're like, okay, but I did it. I did it. And then you keep chipping away at it. And it's kind of it really is for me, the parallels between what I do on a day-to-day basis. You get in what you put out. That's what I love about our industry, is that very rarely do you talk to anyone that went to school for tech, that studied and got a degree in tech in college. it's like they just kind of stumbled upon it, and they had a curious mind, and they kept chipping away, and they kept working at it. They got this certification, or they did, this capture the flag event, and you get in what you put in. And that's what I love so much about running. And so I've kind of worked at it over the years, and I've set various goals. I have an awesome group that I run with in around here that I meet at least 4 out of the 7 days. We run all outside all winter. So that helps. But it really is, when I wake up in the morning, how I go through the 1,000 tabs that I have open in my mind and how it sets me up for the day. So I feel very fortunate that it's a part of my life, and I've met some of the most amazing humans along the way. But I do see a lot of parallels to what I do on a day-to-day basis with my role, and what I do with my running too. So I love it. It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone, but
I do want to talk about how you get into your career, but there's for people who are not runners, who have never run a marathon, they probably don't understand what goes on in a runner's head as they're doing all the different miles. And I've done half marathons, so I know what went through my head.
Sure.
There's things you're thinking about. There's the distance you have to run. There's the pace you're trying to keep. And then there's everything that's happening with your body that may or may not be what you want to have happening as you're running. So talk about those challenges as you experience them as a marathon runner, and then what those lessons are that you've learned that you've now used to guide your life.
Yeah. As cliche as it sounds, your mind is so much stronger than what your body tells you. You can trick yourself into finishing and completing just about anything. I mean, there were long runs where I started getting really into distance running when I was in grad school back in upstate New York. And if you want to talk about debilitating cold, like I can't even begin to describe. There'd be runs where I literally would like sit down on the side of the road. I purposely never bring my cell phone with me because I don't want to weigh out. I want to be able to work my way through it. And there's never been a run where I've had to like flag down a car or believe me, there's been runs where it's an ugly finish when you're having a bad day, but you can trick yourself into doing just about anything. So it's a tremendous exercise in strengthening your mental toughness, and just completing something, going out and completing the task, so even on the hard days, you just have to say, putting one foot in front of the other, count your breath, whatever your mantra is for that day. We can do hard things. It sounds silly, but honestly, like it works. It works. And it's like been such a guiding light for me throughout my life. I think just sports in general, or movement in general. It does not have to be running a marathon. It can be just going and playing pickup basketball or golfing with your friends. Just I don't say it's a replacement for therapy, but it certainly is, for me at least, helpful, a tool that you can rely on for sure.
Yeah, that's great, because I'm happy that how you outline that and how you talked about the resilience and how you break it down into pieces, and how you don't give in when your mind may be saying, hey, there's an easy way out.
Mm-hmm.
So you had this quarter life crisis.
Mm-hmm.
You were in education, and then you decided to go into cybersecurity. Talk a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, so I invested a lot into my career as an educator. I got my master's in education administration, so I spent 2 years doing that back at St. Lawrence University, and was a grad assistant for the field hockey team. And so never in a million years did I think like, okay, I'm gonna like abandon this career that I've spent a lot of time pursuing, especially getting a higher degree in it. But I ended up working in a boarding school in Massachusetts for 4 years. I wore, as you do working in a boarding school, you're not just a teacher, you're a coach, you're an advisor, you're a dorm parent. It is all encompassing. You are teaching classes on Saturday mornings. It's a lifestyle, and it's a great lifestyle, but like many educators, you get very burnt out. and you go into the profession with very altruistic intentions. I'm going to make a difference. And 100%, like I have a profound amount of respect for our educators, much like our healthcare workers, as you and I were discussing on the call before we jumped on. But you get burnt out. And so one of my friends that I went to college with, St. Lawrence, has this amazing networking alumni program. One of my great friends, his dad owned a tech company in Portsmouth, and he was like, how about you just give it a shot, try it out for a year. And so I, to be honest with you, had no intentions of staying in the field of tech. It was more just a bridge until something opened up, either at like a day school where I could catch my breath, where I could maybe have somewhat more of a life. So my intention was to just give it a stop. And then I would always return to education when something opened up local. And then, so the first 6 months, like I didn't even like know how the internet worked. Like when someone said the cloud, like I genuinely like looked up in the sky. Like I had no idea. And the first 6 months, I was like, what have I done? Like, what have I gotten myself into? What is this insane industry? And this is all before AI, like all before you had all those tools at your disposal to teach yourself. And so then one day it just starts clicking. Like I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and I knew that I was responsible for the trajectory of my career. I was 29 years old, so I got into the industry later. I was in this, making cold calls with 21-year-olds. So I had to very much so humble myself, but I knew I was responsible for the trajectory of my career. So I just started studying and working to understand. And it's truly what I love the most is that every day is different. It's such a fascinating field. And then eventually there was a day where I was like, I didn't have to ask any questions today. I didn't have to ask any questions. And I remember the day very clearly. I was like, and what a great feeling. It's like, okay, I finally think I'm getting this thing. So it was totally by happenstance, luck, and then just sheer ignorance that I kind of found my way into this field. And I don't think that's that uncommon in our industry, maybe more so then, but yeah, just a very roundabout way to get into it. But very fortunate that the stars aligned when they did.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that I don't think it's that uncommon that people come from different backgrounds in different industries into cybersecurity. What tools that you had acquired in education do you think helped you to succeed making that transition from education into cybersecurity? It sounds like the research element of that was certainly beneficial to you, but what else did you draw upon?
100%. I would say learning how to study, learning how to teach myself, learning how to be structured. Because listen, there's no, I shouldn't say there's no playbook, but there's no, this is how your day is. Every day is very different, and you have to be willing to be flexible. And if you want to learn something, the onus is on you to make sure that you're sticking to that structure and you're sticking to that schedule and you're being honest about the work that you put in. And so I think certainly just the ability to stick with a plan, make a plan, stick with a plan, and then put in the time to really wrap my head around the information. And look, that looks different for everyone. How you retain information is very individualized. For me, I am very much so a consumer, even to this day, of podcasts, of the IBM lightning board sessions. I can't recommend those enough. Those are awesome for all your visual learners. So for me, it wasn't just sitting and reading a newspaper article or anything like that, or opening up a Networking for Dummies book. I am a consumer of very visual. And so it's just knowing for me personally was the best way that I was going to learn. And honestly, I wish I had learned that more in college. And I think I would have been a much better student if I had that awareness about myself. I'm definitely someone who has to look at the information, and I have to sit with it. Very rarely are you ever going to see me be the first person to raise my hand in a conference room and ask a question. I'm somebody who has to really take a minute. And it took a long time to accept that that's like, there's, when you're growing up, they're like, well, Saeger needs to contribute more in the classroom. And now I'm like, it's actually okay that kids don't, like, they learn differently. So I think, long answer to your question, but I think I can't emphasize enough just being able to learn how to teach myself in that education background.
Yeah. So many important things in there. I heard you talking about what I've learned is called differentiated learning, right?
Yep.
So some people learn from reading, some people learn from watching, some people learn from doing. And that's an important thing to know about yourself, but it's also an important thing to know about the people you work with, because the success of what we do, you from the sales perspective, and myself from the leadership perspective, is we have to tell stories and we have to educate others. So using those tools, understanding how people learn, and how they listen and how they process, which you just talked about, is super important. I'm a lot like you. I've actually had supervisors tell me before that they thought I was zoning out because I wasn't saying anything in the meeting. And I said, no, I'm listening, I'm processing, but I'm not going to speak unless I feel I have something valuable to bring to the table. And if I don't feel I have enough information, I don't want to speak like a fool and waste everyone's time. So yeah, that's a great lesson for our listeners to hear.
Yeah. Talking just to talk for talking's sake is just like, I've never understood it. I used to feel like I had to, if I didn't say something in a meeting that was like hugely impactful or meaningful, then like the meeting was a failure, and it's like, no, I'm actually like, maybe it's because I'm now 41 and you just reach a certain age where you're like, this is a fundamental truth. One of the most important lessons that I learned, I think, so far in my life is that nobody cares about you as much as you care about you, which, you just, if being inauthentic to yourself and, being that person that feels like they just need to like be in the conference room and take up a lot of space isn't authentic to who you are, then don't do it. Like, don't do it. But like you said, I think it's so important. Like if somebody's having a leadership role, they need to be cognizant of how the people that they're leading learn and not try to meet them where they are. Right. And I think just having that awareness is so important, because I've had leaders where that's not the case. And it can lead to a lot of imposter syndrome in this industry, which I think is, especially for women and minorities in this industry, it's a huge problem, right? So I think you're spot on there.
Yeah, that was a nice way for you to avoid saying gaslighting as well, because that.
Yes.
And it's okay on this podcast to say other people, because it happens all the time.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
So, you've been doing cybersecurity sales for a while now. How have you seen the approach that you've had to take with customers or in the industry in general? How have you seen that change over, say, the last 3 to 5 years?
Good question. That's a great question. It has changed, I think, dramatically. I think, back when I first started, I was honestly working on a lot of more like infrastructure opportunities. Like the firewall was kind of the end all be all to cybersecurity, right? Like that was like not the only thing that you needed, but that was the main thing you needed. And that has changed drastically. I think, what I'm enjoying doing most of now is a lot of pen testing. The ante has been upped, as far as security is concerned. And I think one thing is that you can't buy your way out of risk, right? There's no tool that no matter what any vendor says to you, there's no magic bullet. So I think it's definitely become a much more of a consultative approach. Just because you think you need this tool doesn't mean that it's going to be something that you have the folks on your staff to be able to support. So it's very much so like, here's what the industry might tell you that you need, but here's what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. We're in the trenches, and just because it's the best and greatest and flashiest doesn't mean that it's going to be the best for you. It's so noisy. It's so noisy. I don't know how security professionals in your shoes stay on top of it and are not completely and utterly overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis. It blows my mind.
Yeah, it's like you, it's constant reading, constant education. Like it's nonstop. If you're going to be in cybersecurity, especially if you're going to be in cybersecurity leadership, it's sprinting. So it's like a marathon, and you'd like to keep a pace, but you just can't. Sometimes you need to sprint, and sometimes you need to pull back. But if you ever sit down, forget it. Your race, your career is over. We just can't do it.
So I guess for like a question that I have for you is like, how do you wake up each morning and you're like, all right, like we're doing it again. we're doing all these things again. Like, how do you like reconcile that? Because at the end, like I think what I struggle with a lot in our industry is like, it's not a 9-to-5. It's not a 9-to-5. And I guess it can be and I truly admire those people that can make it a 9-to-5 and put those safeguards in place where it is. I think that should be the standard, not the exception.
That's a good question back to me. I think I've always had this mindset of being a defender or standing up for others. So one, I look at my career as that. Every day I get up, I'm thinking, how can I make things a little bit better in my world, in a personal role, but also at work. And so I look at it as more than just securing the organization. I'm looking at it about how do I develop my team? How do I give them opportunities to lead? What do they need? And I'm thinking about their families, and I'm thinking about the families of everyone across the organization. And in the services we provide, I'm thinking of the customers. Like, how can I make sure that the data that we have on them is in a place of trust, top privacy, top security? So I'm looking out globally now. You can go down a rabbit hole and let that keep you up all night and think of all the things that you can't do. But to your point, you can't do all of it.
Yeah.
I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, both enlisted and as an officer. And some of the officer training, what they intentionally do is they overload you with scenarios that you can't accomplish everything. And what they want to see is, how do you deal with the stress? How do you take the information you're getting, and how do you make the best possible decision with the best possible outcome that you can achieve with your resources? So you're never expected to do the mission to 100% perfection, because that's just not going to happen. And you can plan 2, 3, 4, 5 levels deep, and you're probably going to go down to the 4th and 5th level of plans, because everything continues to change as you're trying to do your attack or defense. So I guess I carry that with me. But then knowing that I can't do everything, I have to set limits, right? So there's only so much I can do. There's only so much the team can achieve. There's only so much the organization can afford to invest in protecting itself. So when I take all that and I put it into context, I'm like, okay, I'm one person in a very big world full of billions of people with different agendas. I can just do the best I can do today. And if I can make small improvements or smaller increments every day, then that's good. And then I go back and I do it again. Every day is a little bit different, so I'm never bored. I've spoken many times and said I could not do assembly line work. I couldn't do it because I need to have something different every day. My mind just needs to be stimulated. I need to be challenged. I need to be learning. And cybersecurity gives you that.
Yeah, I think for me that one of the most difficult parts about the industry in cyber was, I think it had to reframe how I define success, because you're never at the end of the day, like, this has been completed to its, like, obviously it's you can complete a certain task to its completion, but you're never done. There's always going to be another CVE. There's always going to be, and while that's great to keep your mind engaged, I think you just clearly like explained it. Like, you have to redefine for me. I had like what success is. Like, I'm very much so like a check each box and want to be done with it, but that's just not how it works doing what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And I think, so let's use marathons as an example, or I like to use climbing a mountain as an example. When I go to climb a mountain, I don't climb and I'm looking at the top of the mountain the whole time, because that would just break my will to complete the hike. Right. So when I'm hiking, I look up the trail where I can see, I look at the trail map if I have one, and I say, I'm going to move to that point. Right. So slowly I'm covering 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, and I keep breaking it into segments as I'm hiking. And eventually there's no more elevation for me to hike. I get to turn around and see the great view. And that's the goal, and that's the achievement. So when I look at a cybersecurity plan for an organization, that's how I break it out. I can't do everything in 1 year. I can't do everything with the resources I have, but I can incrementally make progress. I can make the organization more resilient. I can set more tripwires out there that alert us when something abnormal is happening. And so that's the mindset I think you have to take to it. It's the same thing I think with being a marathoner. You're not thinking about this, 17th mile to 20th mile. You're thinking about 2 more steps, 3 more steps. I can see up ahead of me a hill, a corner. I'm going to make it there, and then I'm going to get to the next segment. And those are the little achievements that you make. In the back of your mind, you're thinking about your pace, and you're thinking about the time that you want to have when you finish. But you may get to the end of that race and you're like, okay, I didn't hit my time, but I did complete this marathon. So
yeah, and you said something interesting too. You're like, I may not complete this in a year. And that is very normal. Like a year is a very long time, but there are projects that I have been working on that have been years, in the making. And so you really have to like be ready to be in it for the long haul, which I think is very unique to what we do. Like you just have to, like, it is very much so a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that that's just, you have to have the mental fortitude to be okay with that. And nothing, I don't want to say nothing gets done quickly, but it's a slower pace to get longer term projects done.
Your perspective from the sales side of the cybersecurity house is very unique. I'll offer my opinion here that I think a lot of people, probably those newer to sales, they're trying to shortcut the process. So, CISOs, and I'm sure I can speak for a lot of other CISOs, we constantly are getting bombarded with reach outs on LinkedIn, people saying, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Without ever having a conversation with us. We don't know who they are. They don't know who we are. They don't know what challenges we're facing. It's immediately they want to get in there and make a sale. I think those people who have been in cybersecurity sales for a longer period of time have developed better strategies for doing that. And I know where you work, Omada Technologies has been around for a little while. The team there has a completely different mindset about how they approach their customers, which I think is why they're so successful. And I think when I look at people who are in sales long term, they all have this trend is they don't look at it as I need to get something and you're going to lose something. Like I need to get my quarterly metrics met and I need to get my bonus. They look at it more in terms of a win-win scenario. So based upon your experience in marathons and in education and where you're working now, tell us a little bit about your approach to establishing those partnerships and what you deem to be a successful partnership, not just for you, but for the customers that you're supporting.
You have to show up. You have to pay attention. You can't just push your agenda. What makes me and anyone else that would work at Omada cringe is when you see this catastrophic event happen. And then you see all these companies saying, well, if you had purchased this wouldn't have happened. And it literally makes my skin crawl because it's just like you are trying to take it that whether or not that's true, I don't know. It's probably not, if we're being honest. But you're taking advantage of a company or a CISO or someone that they're in the most, precarious and vulnerable situation, and you're trying to exploit that. And to me, like listen, like young Saeger, third grade Saeger did not wake up and be like, I want to be a salesperson. Like very rarely, I think that that's the case. I wanted to be a vet. Organic chemistry was a real doozy. It really was eye-opening in college. So that was and I realized that I wanted to acquire animals more than, be the one making the tough decisions as a vet. So when I got into sales, it's very hard on a daily basis to say like, I'm making a difference, but you really can if you go about it in the right way, if you go about it in an authentic way, if you keep showing up, if you go to like the ISSA New Hampshire chapter events, if you show up to the places that matter to the people that you're supporting and you just listen and you put yourself in their shoes and you don't push their own agenda. We have quarters at Omada, but they're fake. We don't, we have an end of year, but we would never compromise the integrity of our own personal brand or our companies just to try to get a deal done before the end of the year. And that's because they're very methodical about who they have in the organization, who they hire. And that's why I came here. The humans, like it's interesting because, you see all this on LinkedIn and my heart goes out to those people that are just, they give 15 years of their life to a company and then they're just let go in an email. And, you see all this verbiage about how your company isn't your family. I genuinely in my heart feel like the people that I work with are a part of my family. And I understand that that is the exception, not the rule. And that makes it a lot easier to say I'm a salesperson. I think there's a lot of like negative connotation when it comes to that title. But I think if you go about it in the right way, and you just are an authentic and trustworthy and genuine person, it makes it a lot easier to go to bed at night and know that you like actually genuinely helped someone by doing the right thing.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
It should be a different title other than salesperson because I think.
Thank you. I don't know what it should be.
I don't know either, but because when there's a partnership and you've heard me say this, and I know Matt, who you work with, has heard me say this a million times. A partnership is how I always refer to it because it's got to be a win-win, and there has to be mutual respect in both directions.
Yes.
And I've had other people I've worked alongside say, no, you have to be harder on the sales rep. I said, no, because here's why I don't agree with that. If I'm in a jam, a product is failing or we're under attack and I need resources from this partner and I know they have the resources, I want to be the one that they want to support because we have a good relationship established on trust. It's mutually beneficial, not an adversarial relationship. Because if I have that adversarial relationship, why does that vendor want to help me? Why does that salesperson want to help me if I've been treating them, like they're unimportant, like they're not a person? There are people on both sides of these relationships. And it's important that we foster that and we look at it as collaboration. So that's why I struggle with salesperson because it just doesn't fit. There's got to be a better title. Like
I think it fits for certain people,
for
some,
but it's more you're more a success collaborator.
I like that. I hate the trusted advisor. It sounds very cliche. I don't. The trusted advisor. I'm like, gosh, we got to come up. But yeah, if we can workshop this, Jess, and if you come up with another one, we're gonna change the way people view salespeople.
Okay, we'll work on that one.
Maybe people can comment if they can come up with anything better. We can wordsmith this.
There you go. If you're listening and you have a better idea, please send it into the show because I'm going to have Saeger back at the end of the year. Because we're about
with a new title.
And we're about to move into our next segment, which is why Saeger. I'm going to ask Saeger to come back at the end of the year. So we're going to do the bingo card predictions, and I don't want to go too far out on this, but I'll start out. So we're going to basically guess what we think is going to happen in 2026. We'll keep it to the industry because we could probably go, down a rabbit hole.
We could go down a very deep rabbit hole. Yep.
So I'll go first. I think 2026 is going to be the year that the AI bubble bursts. And here's why. We have such heavy investments in AI that have been leading up to this point. not just in the AI itself, but in all the underlying technologies, money can only flow out from investors for so long before the investors are going to want to see a return. Now, some of these investors will be able to weather, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. But when you start to have hundreds of investors with so much capital laid out, if they're not realizing success in some form, they're going to start calling that money back in. So I think this is going to be the year where we start to see that bubble burst. I've been in the IT industry and information security industry long enough that I have seen multiple bubbles burst. I was around 2000 with the dot-com bust, and you could see it coming. I mean, you had companies that didn't have a product. They had a promise, but not a product. And I see a lot of that with AI. There's so many AI products out there that they're very niche, or they're not delivering on their promises, that I think it's going to bust this year. And one prime example I like to give. So after I do the podcast, I have the transcript. And what I like to do is just highlight, just bold the speaker name and the timestamp. I tried 4 different AI applications, including Copilot, and I could not get any of them to complete that simple task. If an AI product in 2026 cannot complete a simple task like that, it's not going to do all the things that businesses think that it's going to do for them. We're just not going to realize it. And if the companies can't realize the return on that promise, then they're not going to pay for it. And that's where you're going to have the investors start to get upset. So that's my first one. I will turn it over to you, Saeger.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's definitely, I mean, it's all anyone's talking about right now when they come into our, in our conference room on Mondays to kind of give us the pitch on their products. I hope you're right, because even just from like an environmental standpoint with AI, I struggle with it. Now, that said, what we have been seeing on my side of the fence is just the rise of the agentic SOC. It's the industry's answer to, so far, what I like to say, like a math problem that humans are no longer able to solve because of AI. So I'm very interested to see what happens to the traditional SOC as we know it today. Because in my mind, just with the rise of AI and how it's being weaponized, it's hard to imagine not fighting AI with AI. I'm not saying the human component will disappear entirely at all, but I'm just very interested to see where we go with that and what balance we find. Because that's been a lot of part of the conversations. What's going to happen with those agentic SOC companies out there? We'll see.
Yeah, interesting, because I haven't really been considering that, but yeah, that's definitely one to watch. And we'll circle back on that at the end of the year. Another thing I think we're going to see for this year is around quantum computing, or what we will call post-quantum computing, that era. Projections are, 10 years that it's really going to become mainstream. But I believe in 2026, we are going to see the first almost commercial viable product that starts to break public key encryption. There's the Mosca equation, which is out there, which tells companies how they're supposed to be preparing. I had the pleasure of hearing Dr. Mosca speak, I want to say 4 or 5 months ago. It was very enlightening what he had to say about post-quantum encryption, but also that everyone was basing their plans on what he had said. And he pointed out, look, I said these things 3 to 5 years ago. So the timeline that you're looking at of 10 years, you need to pull that in 3 and 5 years, which means post-quantum encryption, that period of time for cybersecurity is upon us. If you're not planning right now, you're already behind. We look at AI. AI went into kind of a dormancy phase in development for a long time, and then it exploded 3 or 5 years ago and caught a lot of us in cybersecurity off guard because we hadn't been focusing on AI. But post-quantum computing, we've known about it for a while. I think a lot of people, myself included, didn't pay attention to it, especially when AI came about, because we had to focus on that.
Yep.
But it's here. And this 2026 is going to be a year that changes everything. If you
Was
take
that
them,
in-person conference that you attended?
no, there's a professional organization I'm a member of that he spoke to us. I think there was probably 15 or 16 of us that he spoke to. So it was a very unique situation. I'm very grateful for it. But I walked away with a whole lot of work that I had to do moving forward.
Yeah, I think I don't know if anyone, I mentioned the IBM whiteboard series, but Jeff Crum, who leads them, does this fantastic kind of prediction for what's to come. And usually he's pretty spot on. So I would definitely encourage anyone to go and watch that whiteboard series. I'm sure we could probably link it after this, but he's got some fascinating predictions and he's usually pretty spot on.
Have you heard of a product called Island?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you, and I'm going to talk about why this is going to be on my list for this year, but why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about the Island product?
So they have an enterprise, what's called an enterprise browser. What has been your, and and now there's companies like Netscope has their own option. Palo Alto has their own option. So basically, in simple terms, instead of using a consumer grade browser like standard Chrome or Safari for work, like Island provides a Chromium based browser that's basically designed specifically for corporate environments. So it embeds security, governance, and productivity tools directly into the browser itself, rather than bolting them on with separate agents or extensions. There's probably a lot more that I could get into, but that's a conversation. I'm having those conversations with folks 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. So for the security people out there, you might look at Island for browser isolation, but it is capable of doing so much more than that. It can displace all the hardware you have to have. If you want to talk about zero trust, it is really a product that is going to deliver zero trust. You could hire someone tomorrow, tell them to go pick up a laptop at their local computer store, bring it in, give them the link to the Island browser, and they're off and running. You can give them all their applications. You can do all your role-based access control. It is going to be a game changer. It already is a game changer, which is why
VPN.
All these, you can get rid of your VPNs.
Yep.
Your organization can save a tremendous amount of money in both IT, but also in securing your organization. That is why you're seeing all these other big companies now. They're pivoting because they've seen that Island is taking their customers, and I can understand why Island is taking their customers. So I think this is the year that Island is going to upset the security industry. It's going to upset the computer industry as well. And I would not be surprised if someone aggressively goes after them for acquisition in
100%. And the thing about Island too is that, not to make this a sales pitch for them, but one, they're an amazing organization to work with, and 2, they are constantly innovating. I mean, it is unlike any other company I've worked with before, in that, a lot of times, you'll ask them, oh, is this feature available? And they'll be like, oh, it's on the roadmap. And it's like, and then you wait, and then it, narrator, it hasn't even been put into, production to get on the roadmap. They really move quickly. It's remarkable. So I think that's a great prediction and spot on for you to bring up. We are having these conversations on a daily basis with folks that we work with. So it's very top of mind. It saves a lot of money for people and is solving a lot of headaches with heavy, VDI environments and Citrix and all the things. So that's a good prediction.
Well, thank you. That's one of those products that I always picture it this way. If you've seen the meme where the guy's sitting in between 2 women and he's got supposedly his girlfriend on one side and he's looking at a woman on the other side, it's usually a meme about I have something great, but there's something else over here. And so the Island product was kind of that moment for me where I was looking at security products and a plan over here, and all of a sudden I looked at Island and went, wow, this is completely new. This is unique. There's nothing like it, and this is a game changer. So
yeah, in my mind, I think they're in the same bucket with like the Whizzes of the world, as far as like their trajectory and kind of like what that company, Whiz in general, just like that was fascinating to watch how that just exploded. I forget what the metrics were within their first year, but it was truly remarkable. So I think Island is in that category for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of, I don't know if you're familiar with Drata. They make a governance risk compliance product.
Yep.
Drata is another one of those products that really changed the whole game for governance risk and compliance platforms and their innovation cycle. I mean, every 3 months they're putting out new features, and the company's built by governance risk and compliance professionals. So really spot on. I don't have a prediction to make about them, but they're definitely a company to watch going through 2026 because they're on an upward trajectory. They started out just doing smaller startup companies, and now they're moving into the enterprise-sized companies. So truly unique to watch. Now, I think my last prediction is that we're going to see a significant cybersecurity event at the federal level, and that is going to be due to lack of a cohesive vision for what we should have for cybersecurity at that level. I think the gutting of CISA is certainly going to have an effect on that. There are good people still at CISA.
Yeah.
But I think they're struggling to do the right thing because a lot of the really brilliant people that developed the CISA organization are gone. And some of the positive direction the organization had been moving in has been changed for political gain. So I think the eyes that the government needs to have on the infrastructure are not there right now. And either the North Korean government, the Chinese government, or the Russian government is going to take advantage of that back if they haven't already.
Unfortunately, I think you are correct. It's sad. They did so, and I'm not saying they don't do this anymore, but they contributed so much. Just information, so who's going to step up and take the place of that? Who's going to be the guiding light, the single source of truth that you can go to? Like, is there a place now that you go to instead to get your information where you're like, okay, this is information that I can trust. This is where I need to like focus my attention. And if what they're saying is something that I need to be aware of and put top of my priority list.
Yeah, for me, there's an organization called IANS, IANS, that has excellent individuals that are professionals in the organization. You can purchase services through IANS. All these people I'm mentioning, I don't even do business with. I'm just I'm just impressed by them. So I just want to put that out there.
Sponsor the podcast.
Yes, please sponsor the podcast. But they have some individuals there that are they're out in the trenches doing the work, and they bring some really good guidance forth to the industry. There's some common voices that are out there. There's some really good podcasts that are out there that have some good information to share. There's the CISO Society, which is out there, which is, I don't even remember how many of us are in there now. I think we're over 2,000 members. So we're talking, sharing information, creating white papers, creating guides, and sharing those. When you have all of us doing the same type of work, it makes sense for us to start sharing some knowledge there. But yeah, hopefully things, change in the government. I hope someone from the government listens to this podcast and says, maybe we should do some more with, bolstering CISA and making sure that it's capable of truly defending the IT infrastructure of the nation, because it's vitally important to the defense of the nation.
Yeah.
And to our privacy, right? Each of us values our individual privacy, and I think we need to trust that our government is valuing that equally. So
it's hard to get folks to understand or care until it like directly impacts their day to day. I'm waiting. You and I discussed. I'm waiting for any of anyone else that's obsessed with the show The Pitt, I'm waiting for them to do an episode where it's focused on like what happens when everything breaks, like just from like a tech perspective. Like that to me would be like a truly fascinating, because I think people just like when you're going into these hospitals, like you don't think just about how everything there is connected until it impacts you. You just don't even give it a second thought because it just works. So that's an episode I would like to see. So if anyone from The Pitt is watching this podcast, that's my pitch.
Yes, I would like to see that as well. And I've worked in healthcare, so I know what happens. And
You've lived it.
I'd be happy to consult The Pitt. So, this has been a great conversation, and I want to thank you for being here, because one, I think you give the perspective of someone who is non-traditional to the industry, coming in and being very successful, and highlighting you. People get to see like, oh, I can learn all of this. Saeger learned all of this, and Saeger's successful. This is a good example for me to follow. So I know there's a lot of people out there struggling, wondering if they should go into cybersecurity or not. And I say, yeah, if you're hearing commonalities with Saeger's story to your own story, then absolutely do it. And if you have even hobbies that are challenging, like a marathoner's, that's a challenging sport to choose. If you do something like that, then you might have the temperament to be in cybersecurity. If you've been in education, you definitely have the temperament to be in cybersecurity. I've hired people who are bartenders, police officers, former military, authors of books. So you can come from any industry and be successful in cybersecurity if you just want to apply yourself and you have the ability to learn. But all those skills you bring, those intrinsic skills, matter. And Saeger's story is a prime example of this. Taking your life lessons, taking what you've learned, taking the challenges you've overcome, and deciding that you can do something new and being successful at it. And, I've had the pleasure of being able to watch you for a few years in different segments of the industry, and I'm just so happy that you ended up at Omada. I think that was a brilliant choice on their part to bring you aboard, and I know they would agree with me as well.
Yeah, they're good humans, and thank you. I think to your point, if you have a curious mind, and I think we did a lot of folks, back pre-COVID, a big disservice when we're basically like, I think the belief was, if you get a degree, there's going to be a job, in cybersecurity, there's going to be a job waiting for you right when you graduate. And so I think it created this misconception, which was just woefully just so unfair to those that decided to pursue this career, and just now has created this bubble. And I wish I had an answer for it. I can just say, show up to the events, your local events, find a mentor. I love working with folks. I love reaching out to, engaging with folks in the community. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Find your people and just keep working at it. Do the capture the flag events. Just keep chipping away, and ask for help, because it's not easy, but it's worth it. It's a great career. It really is. It's a great career, but there's plenty of resources available for help if you need it. So happy to help in whatever capacity is needed or wanted for anyone listening that's thinking about getting into it.
That's awesome. Thank you for closing that up for us. To our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, share with someone who needs it, and let us know what conversation you want to do next. Until next time, bye.
Bye. Thank you. Appreciate it, Jess.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Voices of the Vigilant. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and leave a review in your favorite podcast app. For a copy of the transcript, to follow Jess, to apply as a guest of the show, or to learn more about services from Vigilant Violet, please visit vigilantviolet.com. Until next time, stay vigilant.